So grateful to have you on this podcast. I know you wrote a book, and I wanted to get you on this thing to start talking about it a little bit. Please go ahead and introduce yourself, give your first and last name, who you are, what your passions are, your journey, and how you got to write this book. Because it was pretty fascinating from what you were telling me. And the
Sure
stage
thing.
is yours, my friend.
Sounds good. My name's David Glenn. I live in the suburbs of Philadelphia. That's where I grew up and been around. I've traveled to about 30 countries over the years, sort of
Wow.
gone walkabout, And, my stage name for my music is Commander Hemp. And I just released about 17 singles, albums coming next week, which will have 14 of those singles on it. Songs range anywhere from reggae, which is two songs I love, Rum, Who Controls the Pot Supply, to pop song called We and Call the Wild, which is the theme song for my novel that it took about 25 to 26 years to write and finally
Wow.
bring to print. I just printed it in, I think October was the first run, fairly reasonable. But the name of the novel is Poaching the Poachers, The Key to Greed.
The key to
And
greed.
it's an
Go
eco
ahead.
fiction thriller.
How did you come
It's,
up with this book and the title and what drove you to write this?
well, when I came up with the idea, back in the day when reggae music was real popular back in the late 90s, late 80s, mid 90s. And I was actually waiting to, in the summer, I was waiting to go into OCS for the Army. And they were really dragging their feet because there was no threat of war. And so I had a summer job painting houses. So I came up with the idea while I was painting all day. My one innate thing that I have is my imagination. I can be on a ladder scraping a window in Pennsylvania, but my mind can be on the Riviera Beach, with a couple of supermodels. Yeah, that summer I came up with the idea of this Rastafarian who was like a real righteous character who had who had earned a lot of money through the cannabis trade, and a character who's like a real, like a shadow type of character. Nobody knows what he looks like, but everybody knows who he is around Jamaica because he's very generous with his money. He gives a lot of money to charity and to hospitals, and everybody knows his philosophies. He's a very big environmentalist. He's a common sense environmentalist, not one of these the Green New Deal, which he calls the Green New Squeal. And so anyway, he's getting sick and tired of all the hits that Mother Nature's taking, and so he's made like hundreds of million of bucks, exporting quality cannabis out of Jamaica for like 30 years. And he lives up in the hills outside in the grill. He's got like an underground palace, sort of like a really a luxury bat cave or something. So he decides he wants to do something to help Mother Nature. Like wants to spark an environmental conservation grassroots revolution movement, and so he sets a $5 million bounty on the head of the largest poaching ring in Africa, a guy named Leopard, who's got his own little mobile gang of Zulu thugs who go from defunct country to defunct country, and they rape it. They take whatever they want. They kidnap rich people's kids, hold them for ransom. They enslave the local tribes people to help them with ensnaring the animals for the tusks and the hides. They do anything to make a buck. Nothing's off limits, and they got a nice little mobile crew where they're self-sufficient. They've got solar power mobile. They got compressors. They got trucks. They got it. They got everything. They got weapons. And at present, they're at the base of Mount Kenya, and Leopard's little lair. He's taken sort of refuge up in a cave on top of a 80-foot waterfall, and they're like hunting the area around there. And so to get the payoff from Solomon is the name of the Rastafarian. To get that $5 million payoff, this leopard, the poaching king, has a solid gold front tooth with a diamond star embedded in it. You got to bring that tooth back as proof that you slayed the guy, right?
Oh wow.
And then Solomon also sets a $10 million bounty out on a North American timber tycoon who's a major deforester. And actually, he's in an international, very exclusive group of devil worshippers. Really, they're like
Wow.
and they're like real rich guys, and nobody knows how like real evil, but they'll do anything for a profit. This guy, he'll knock out a Brazilian indigenous tribe to be able to then come in with his helo loggers and take out the Brazilian walnut and sell them to buyers in Europe or something like that. So nothing's off limits. So it's so Solomon puts a $10 million bounty on this guy's head, and he wants him delivered to Jamaica to get the payoff, but he wants him alive because he wants to use him as the poster child for industrial immorality, right? So
Oh,
it's
wow.
like, who's going to take this Rasta man serious? I mean, come on, you guys really going to pay all this dough off for these big bounties? It's a great idea, and the word gets out all over, through his channels and all over the world. The word gets out. It's on the news, and people are sort of chuckling about it. Yeah, who's going to? So anyway, there's a retired captain from Special Forces who's just been out of the military for U.S. military army for like 2 years, and he's got a reggae band and reggae rock band in Jamaica with a Jamaican French Foreign Legion buddy of his who were in on this retaliatory hit back in earlier in their career for the Kenyan and Tanzanian Islamic extremist bombings of those embassies. So they go on a retaliatory hit. That's how we know each other. They're retired now. They got a band, and they got a hit song that's getting up the charts in Jamaica called "I Love Rum." So they hear about the bounties, and they know this guy Solomon is a righteous dude. He's like his word is ironclad. He's a true Jamaican man. So they think about it overnight, and the one guy. Now Robinson Grant, he's a Jamaican French Foreign Legion. He's a little bit. He's not in good shape anymore. He's taking the party life, but Shane McClary, the Special Forces captain, he's still in good shape. So, and he's got enough dough, and they got a good contact over in the French Foreign Legion still. A sergeant major at the base in Djibouti. He's an Australian. His name's Mick Stevens. And he's a real wheeler dealer. He's like the type of guy who can sell rice to the Chinese or ice to the Eskimos, And so, anyway, they call him up because anything worth knowing goes for this guy, And Djibouti is like 800 miles from where Leopard's encampment is actually. So they call him up, and it's Mick Stevens, his name is, and Mick goes, I was waiting for your call, And so he goes, I know where the guy is, and we actually have a guy on the inside. One of our old buddies in the Legion, his tribe has been enslaved by some of the members of his tribe have been enslaved by this guy, and he knows where he is, and he's sort of got an inside track to the guy. So what happens is, McClary, the Special Forces captain, he flies to Africa, and he brings along a couple of buddies along the way who find there some colorful characters that come along, some of his old buddies. So they get there and they form the plan at the base in Djibouti. And the plan is that they're going to halo jump this guy, Kiku. He's the guy who's on the inside, the African tribe guy who used to be in the Legion. He was a corporal in the special. So Kiku and McClary are going to go. They halo jump about 10 miles south of Leopard's encampment at Mount Kenya into an area that's sort of rocky where the patrols stay out of that area. And so they halo into there, and then they take off on a trek. They got to go through, the savannah. They got to dodge the animals, and they got roving patrol trucks from the Leopard's crew. Their snare traps, but they got a little help because Kiku, before he left, he had told some of his tribesmen, fellow buddies, that they're coming. So these guys each stopping point they said, or have somebody help them with their gear, and they keep trekking up to the base of Mount Kenya where the waterfalls. So the first night they make it through the night. They have some obstacles they got to meet. There's a pack of hyenas they got to deal with. There's a couple of crewmen. They got a buzzard blows up, hits a landmine, and some of Leopard's patrol guys come and check it out. So they're dodging through. So then they get up to about maybe a quarter mile from the first lookout tower. This Leopard guy's got 3 lookout towers built into the forest at the base of Mount Kenya. They're all camouflaged and you can't even see them. But so they hole up for the whole next day in ghillie suits, camouflaged, just just baking in the sun, waiting for the day to go by so they can make their move up, trek up the river, and then up the top of the waterfall to the next day. Because every Wednesday morning, Leopard comes out of his cave, where he's got a couple of like slave babes who treat him like the pharaoh, they fan him and massage him all day. And so he comes out every Wednesday morning to inspect the week's poached goods, and so they know. So the dusk comes, and then the boys make their move. They ditch the ghillie suits, and then so on the way up to Leopard's cave, where the inspection is going to go, there's 3 lookout towers. So they got to plant the charges, C4 charges on timers that are supposed to go off just about a half an hour after the meeting's supposed to take place in the morning. So Kiku, who's one of the tribesmen, and they know him there because he had sort of infiltrated as one of the slave guys. He goes up and drops like a C4 in the water tank, and then he digs one at the bottom of the post, and the second one, blah blah blah. So they make their way up the river, and then they got to scale this waterfall, and they got to scale this waterfall 80 feet. And then they finally get up and then they make up to the sniper spot. And then Kiku, he F's off, for the next day. He goes back, he meets with his tribal boys and to go and act like everything's normal. And then McClary's just sitting up there with his HK 416 ready to go. And so, the morning comes, and all of a sudden people start gathering at the meeting place. Leopard security guys are there. They all got their weapons, and they're all having their morning smokes and stuff. And then, so this guy Leopard, he loves grand entrances, right? So he's got the tribal guys are all enslaved. They all got their drums. And so when the time comes, they all start drumming, and Leopard comes out with his fez on and this nice white robe that goes down. And so then that's when McClary, he takes aim, and then he just pops him right in the back of the head, and he just falls like a timber fallen tree right down, and his neck gets gored on a rhino horn, and then all hell breaks loose. And the enslaved tribal guys with the drums pull out machetes out of the drums, and they just start attacking all the security, the guards, and all hell breaks loose. And McClary just starts popping off blasts and taking guys out, and he's got a grenade launch and launches a couple grenades. So all hell breaks loose. So what the main thing is, they got to get the tooth of Leopard, right? Because that's worth the $5 million. So they had a plan. So what happens is they take Kiku and Tupaca, who's the big chief. He's like a 6'10" chief. They grab Leopard, and they take some pliers. They yank out his tooth. They put it in a little film container, and then they put it inside one of those shave cream cans. Remember the old ones at the bottom screws out, and you can hide something in it. Used to hide your weed in there when you were a kid or something. And so they put the tooth in there, and then they put it in a bag, and they throw it in the river, and then it goes off the waterfall into the basin pool. And then McClary, who sniper, who's going to be taking the tooth back to Jamaica, he jumps off the waterfall and into the pond, and then
Oh, wow.
he retrieves the shave cream can floating. Then he's got to make his way down the river, and he's bound to meet troops from Leopard's gang as he goes down the river.
Oh, wow.
Wild ride on the way down the river. And he's got a couple of guys who pick up on his trail too that are following, like one of Leopard's real badasses named Shakar, who saw what happened. And you meet him in the night before. So and then the towers blow up. It gets real wild. And then he's got a helicopter that's supposed to pick him up out in the plane that was all set up for one of Mick Stevens is the Australian Sergeant Major's poker buddies that he plays, an ex-Vietnam vet pilot who works for National Geographic. He picks him up, and then they take off. So basically, McClary gets back to Jamaica, meets Solomon, the Rastafarian cannabis exporter guy, and he gets taken up to his underground palace through a clandestine source. They meet, they hit it off. This guy Solomon is just he can't believe he's on the edge of his seat listening to the story about how he couldn't believe it happened. He's so proud. He gives McClary gets $5 million. He puts it right into a Swiss bank account, no messing around, and then gives him a bonus of half a $1,000,000 too. And he says, "Look, you do such a great job. I'm so thankful and respectful. Here's all the material I have on the Stuyvesant Buckley, who's the timber tycoon. you feel like a guy I can really trust. Just look at the information, see if you want to, maybe launch a maneuver to kidnap this guy. So McClary's like, well, maybe, I'm happy with the 5 million, but I'll think about it. So he goes back and, celebrates for a few days. And then he looks through the material and he finds out that this Buckley guy, who's around like 70 years old, is getting married to like a 35-year-old babe, hot to trot, gold digger. They're getting married down in Costa Rica in like 4 months' time at Buckley's beachside ranch. He's got like a 80-acre or 100-acre ranch there, right in Guanacaste province on the west coast of Costa Rica. So Shane was stationed in the latter half of his military career with Special Forces, I think 7th Group, down, and they were running operations out of Costa Rica in Panama, Nicaragua, blah blah blah. So he's got friends down there, and used to date a gal from there. Anyway, so he calls up the older brother of his old girlfriend at the time down there, and he's an ex Costa Rican professional soccer player. He knows a lot of people, And so he calls up and they send a scouting party down to check out the ranch where Buckley's going to be. And they find out that one of their old surfer buddies' cousin is a maid at the ranch, right? And she knows, and she hates Buckley. Buckley's fiance is a real bitch, from hell, and she's getting ready to quit the job. They tell her, don't quit the job, And so they think they can make a move on this Buckley guy because they got 4 months to make. So they they tell Solomon, all right, we're going to make a move. And Solomon says, all right, I'll give you $500,000 of expense money. And so Shane basically parachutes into Black's Beach, Coweta. That's on the Caribbean side of Costa Rica. And he parachutes in at night because he don't want to go through the airport with all that cash, And Eduardo, that's his buddy, his contact, ex-professional soccer player down there. He picks him up with her surfing buddy, Orlando, is a character. They get back, and then they got so Mick Stevens is now retired, the Australian sergeant major, and he's retired now. He comes down to help out with them, and then they take 2 other buddies that were in their special forces days for a little youth and some muscle. A guy named God, what are their name? I'll tell you anyway. Those 2 guys come along, and so they get down and they scout the place out, and then they see a shack. A fisherman owns it, the poorest fisherman shack in town. It's about 25 yards from the stone wall that wraps around the estate. And they say if we could take hold of that shack, we can dig a tunnel. It's about 120 yards from the shack to underneath the veranda where the wedding's going to take place. So they give the guy who's the poor fisherman, they give him like $3,000. He's ecstatic. They sent him back to Nicaragua where he's going to go open up a taco shop. He's psyched, yeah. And so they take over the shack and they use that as the entrance for the tunnel. They start digging a tunnel, and they dig the tunnel under the property line, and then they get the tunnel done about 2-3 weeks before the wedding, and they don't open the hole yet under the veranda. They just got one of those little cameras you sneak up so you can see that, and they know they got it. They're there, and so what they do in the meantime, they had set up. There's another character whose name is Luger Rommel. He's an Austrian arms dealer. He's a real bastard, man. He sells weapons to anybody under the sun, drug dealers, anybody, who will buy, and he never seems to get caught. He's got some type of eminence front that seems to take look after him or something. But they set him up because he was in on something in the beginning. But they set him up to take the downfall for kidnapping Buckley. They lure him to Costa Rica on an arms deal. They make up a fake cocaine lord named Castillo, and they send out through Solomon, the Jamaican Rastafarian. He sets a reputation in the Caribbean for this Castillo guy. They rip off some of the Colombian drug shipments, like $1 million shipments, and then so they make this fake guy Castillo. And he needs some arms, to operate, to keep his. So that's where they bring this guy Luger Rommel down on an arms deal, and they bring in on the meeting to set up the arms deal, they bring in some real saucy looking babe, that one that is in their crew, and this guy's like, oh yeah, this looks pretty good. So he goes down, they kidnap him, and they're going to set him up as the red herring, to take the fall. So anyway, the day comes, it's wedding day, and they pop out of the tunnel and they hit him with a tranquilizer dart right in the butt. The guy fought, they drag him into the tunnel. They take him cross country in the guts of a bus. They shorten the luggage container of the bus. They put him in there, and they have it all set up. And they run a decoy though, because they had gotten mannequins to look with the same dress, the black jumpsuits, as they wore when they broke out of the tunnel under the veranda to kidnap Buckley. So they have mannequins dressed up in the same thing, off in a speedboat offshore. So when the helicopter goes up with the security guys trying to find out where the hell the boss went, they lead him on a wild goose chase with one of their guys, and while the other guys take Buckley on the bus, and they take him all the way across the country to Limon. Solomon has a buddy who's the pilot of a Chiquita banana freighter, and they take him to Jamaica in the banana freighter. So anyway, McCleary gets that $10 million too. And then what happens from there is Solomon gets pretty famous for all these two bounties being fulfilled. Nobody can really believe it. It's news all over the world. So then Solomon decides he's going to come out, and he runs for president of Jamaica. And he wins in a landslide, like 85% of the vote, and he wins. So now he's like legit, right? And they run Buckley, the timber tycoon. They put him through in front of the Jamaican Supreme Court, and they sentence him to a lifetime of indentured servitude, cleaning up litter on the island of Jamaica, planting, tending to the hemp fields or whatever. He's going to have to work, a work week, and he's going to be incarcerated, And so, anyway, so from there, about a year goes through, and Solomon's plan, they put into effect a worldwide eco tour where they're going to shore up wildlife refuges with, like drones to keep eyes on the animals, for like spots where if there's drought, they have watering holes. They give body armor to the park rangers. They give equipment, they're getting hemp operations going. I'll tell you more about that in a sec. And then they're getting like litter cleanups going everywhere, and they're bringing people all together under this movement. And hemp is a big part of Solomon's. Because hemp is biodegradable. It's great for plastics instead of the petroplastics. Hemp biodegrades in like 80 days or something. It just starts disappearing. It biodegrades in rapid time compared to petroplastic. It sit around for 500 years. It floats around in the oceans. It breaks down into microplastics. It's horrible. The fish eat it, then we eat it. So that's one big thing. Plus, the great thing about hemp is it's when you burn it, the fallout is good for the soil, as where it could see hemp can replace coal. Coal fallout is poisonous, toxic for the soil. So if we were growing hemp, not only is it taking carbon out of the atmosphere, it's also you can use it to burn for energy, and the fallout is actually, it's beneficial. It's not poisonous to the soil, so you could do away with coal with burning hemp pellets, and hemp stalks. And so that's one big thing. Also, I talk about a lot of you learn a lot about the environment. I did a lot of research. I'm not an expert, but I did a lot of research, and things I found, like the electric cars, there's too much involved in all the mining and all the pollution with the mining. And then, with the windmills, all of the, you can't recycle the blades and all the chemicals that go in there. Now, I'm not saying they're horrible, but for offshore, they're killing so much wildlife off the Jersey coast. It's pathetic. And basically, like what I've seen instead of the electric cars are the hydrogen engines are really coming along. Toyota, Yamaha's got a marine version, Tesla. they're really doing great with the development of the hydrogen engine. And what the big leap was, it used to be where you had to take the hydrogen out of the water in a processing plant. So you have to put it into a container, which is explosive. You have to replace a container to drive your engine. Nowadays they got an electrolysis process that happens inside the engine, so it separates the hydrogen right inside the engine. It's really, really great, and that's coming along strong. And because
Wow.
I'm not against. The fossil fuels are a backbone of our society. I'm not against them. But for us to deplete the fossil fuels in 200 years or 300, whatever it's going to take, and they're all gone, the Earth's going to be around for another, 2-3 billion years. We're basically screwing everybody going forward. So we got to. That's why I think we got to start getting hemp involved, because that can help as a source that you can always have it. I mean, I made up a little ditty. Fossil fuels come and go, the wind's ever changing, but hemp is forever.
Oh, wow. How did you come up with hemp?
Well, hemp is, it's been around since God's green earth started, and it's really a weed, but it grows on minimal amount of water, and you get 2 crops a year at least. And plus it's great for all kinds of other things: oils, cooking oils, oils to run machines, for building supplies. You can replace drywall with hemp, and they have these hemp walls now that are fire resistant. And this stuff's all
Wow.
biodegradable. Just hemp is really, it's the gift that keeps on giving. You can use it on so many things, and for fuels too. You can use it for biodiesel fuel and fuels. So the
So
whole thing.
when you say Toyota and other cars are doing it, how are they implementing hemp into their
They're
system?
not implementing hemp. They're actually they're doing the hydrogen engines. So
I see.
the hemp is different. That's hemp. Hemp can be used. Stalks can be used for biofuel, and
Got
that's
it.
different. Now there are cars, trucks run on biofuel down in Brazil. They're really got a lot of cars run on biofuel, and they also make biofuel out of switchgrass, out of a number of other things that are coming along. But hemp's one of the big ones. The reason it hasn't already taken like full bore blast is because the profit. They got it. It's got to be a profitable. Plus the oil company lobbyists are. They got the in and on DC and a lot. They got so much money behind them. And years ago there was a big conspiracy against the hemp plant back with William Randolph Hearst. He ran his his publishing industry off of timber, and he had just purchased 750,000 acres of Mexican timberland to run his publishing company. And hemp they had just invented this thing. You'll see it on road crews, like tree surgery crews. It's called the Vermeer chopper. They put the branches in, spits out the chips. They just invented that back in like the early 30s, and that was making hemp a competitive value to timber. So William Randolph Hearst started running all this BS, fake information about hemp in his
Wow.
newspapers, saying that hemp, basically it was affiliating hemp, which is the industrial version of the cannabis plant, with the one that grows the bud for smoking, with white guys raping, black guys raping white women, the Mexican making lazy, the workers weren't lazy, all this BS, about the cannabis plant. So they made the cannabis plant illegal. Back at the time, there was like only one drug enforcement agent in the whole country, right? So everything was paid off and set up. They got cannabis introduced as a drug, made it illegal as a drug, and that took growing hemp out of the marketplace. So they were able to get it out as a competitor to
Wow.
petroleum and to timber. So
Wow.
anyway, and so in the book, everything's really going well for about a year, or maybe I think a year or 2 years, maybe. They do this whole circumnavigation with Solomon and Shane and Robinson. He's the Jamaican Frenchman. Their band's called the Pollinators, and they got hit songs, and they play at each port they go to, and everybody's on board doing great. They have a whole band of like river keepers who are monitoring water. Everything's going great with the environmental movement. And then this Lugaramo guy who they set up in part two to take the fall for the Buckley. He's in a prison, right? He's been in for the whole 2 years. They did this eco tour. This guy's been rotting in an island prison in Costa Rica called St. Lucas, right? He ends up breaking out. Some of his guys break him out, right? On a night, and they blow out a hole in the wall and they take him out and they get him out off this island. So he does a retaliatory hit on Solomon's crew because he knows that they basically set him up. He sees, that they're the ones. So they launch there's a oil tanker going through near Jamaica. They had been sort of tailing. They've been watching the Solomon's, the boat that was used for the eco tour, which was a Jamaican Coast Guard cutter. It's coming back to port in Montego Bay after the tour. They're going to have a concert. They're getting ready to have a big concert on shore, and for all their fans waiting. So there's this oil tanker that's on its way to Venezuela, and so there's a Harrier jump jet inside the guts of the tanker, and they have a little spy, this little lady. It would be like a James Bond movie, some little old witch up on and she sees that the crew, Solomon's crew with McClary, the guys are back in port. They dropped anchor. So she calls on a burner phone to the oil tanker. They're here. So the jump jet comes up, and they send a jump jet off and it comes burning in and launches missiles at the cutter anchor and blows the hell, kills 4 or 5 guys. Anyway, a smart guy though who was on the cutter crew, they have some heat-seeking defensive missiles, and they fire a couple off, and one of them takes out the plane. So the boat gets met. But what happens with McClary? McClary, the main protagonist, who goes, a guy who went after the bounties. He was walking down to a dinghy at the time to go inshore because he's a lead singer for the Pollinators, and he was walking with his lady. And when the first missile hits, he gets tossed over the rail, and he crash lands in a dinghy, and the dinghy was loosely tied, and they both he's got like a concussion. She broke her ankle. They're passed out, and they get set off on a breeze and the current out in the middle of the Caribbean. So they're floating around out in the Caribbean for 2 weeks until they're starving to death, right? And they got they got no food left, and they're think they're gonna die, and they start making love for what they think is gonna be the last time, right? And then his Christina, his girl, she's like, I see a boat, and it's a Cuban naval Coast Guard boat that spots him and picks him up, almost dead from starvation, takes him back to Cuba. Everybody around the world thinks McClary's dead. He's become a famous music star. Their album, the Pollinators album, has hit #1 on the charts. They're making money hand over foot, And so he's reviving in a Cuban hospital under special guard, from Castro, because Castro liked him, even though McClary hates commies. Castro likes it's his favorite American because they did stop in Cuba for the eco tour, and part of that was playing softball and to clean up the island. Blah blah blah. So anyway, once McClary revives, he finds out that the oil tanker that the jump jet was set off of was owned by a company called Make a Mess On. It's sort of a play on words, remember Exxon, ever make a mess on, oil spill, make a mess on. They're called Make a Mess On. And then, and they're headquartered in New York City. And so that they think that's what the Cuban, everybody's blaming Cuba for it because it's close to Jamaica, but the Cubans intelligence service said, no, that came off of this oil tanker that landed in Venezuela. We called Maduro to check out the tanker. They said everything had been cleaned up, but they know who owns it. So they know that the headquarters for the Make a Mess On is in New York City. So McClary goes on a Cuban cargo ship heading up to Canada, and they got this little 14-foot graphite sailboat. They let him off the coast of New Jersey. He goes into Sea City to his uncle's place, and then he makes his way up to New York City. And he has an old Marine buddy who's living in Brooklyn, and he goes and he holes up there, and they plan on how they can get some information about this guy who's the CEO of Make a Mess On. They find out that they're having a board meeting. And so in a couple of weeks' time, on the same night as a Monday night on a Monday, right? Afternoon. And that night, the Philadelphia Eagles are playing the New York Giants in Monday Night Football in the Meadowlands. So what they do is they get two busloads of crazy Philadelphia Eagles fans with all their drums and their kazoos, and they get and they head up the alleyway behind on the day of the board meeting at the oil company. And so right when the all these guys are processioning by singing "I Fly Eagles Fly" by the loading dock of the building where the meeting's on the top floor, up on the 38th floor. McClary is inside a box, and his buddy Ramon Clarence, who's the Marine, and Mick Stevens, they dress up in disguise, and they come in acting like they're dropping off a refrigerator for Mr. Heckle, who's the CFO of Make a Mess On. And so they bring it in right when all the Eagles fans come in, and the dock manager's like, "You Eagles fans are crazy. You got to get it." So the guy's like, "Well, we'll take the refrigerator up to," and the guy's like, "Go ahead. I got to stop these crazy nuts." So that was like a diversion, to get them to be able to. So they take the elevator up and basically get into the board meeting, and they're not positive that the CEO is behind it, but they go in, they hustle all of the board members into a room, and then so now McClary is one-on-one with the CEO, and he starts pressuring him. The hit came from your boat, blah blah blah, and it said, "Where's Lou Rommel?" And he fires a shot whizzing by his head that hits, impacts on a pillar or something. I think he blows a phone away or something like that. And the guy's like, the guy's backing up. The CEO, he's all apparently, "Don't hurt me, don't hurt me." And like he goes, "Where Rugal Ahmed is? I want tell me where Lugal Rommel is." That's the arms dealer guy. And the guy goes, "I know no such character." And then finally the guy, he goes, "I despise that guy," or something. So he basically spits out that he goes, "All right, I know where he just told me that he's in Moldova, he's somewhere in Eastern Europe and holding up. And he said that his secretary knows everything. That's it. Only if I need to get in touch, talk to his secretary." So basically after that, he gives the boot to the CEO, who falls off, out the window, 30 stores down onto a balcony. They had to get some payback, and then they go out. And so what they do is they get all the board members from the Make a Mess On company, and they drive them into town's Times Square in the back of this van, and they dress them up like cross dressers, and they put signs on them like "Spill Baby Spill" and "Hemp Forever," and all, make them look these eco signs, and they dress them up in high heels and lingerie. And so they kick them out the back of the van right in the middle of Times Square, and then they drive off, and then it makes the news, Make a Mess On. So so then it goes on to, now they have to go find Lugal Rommel, right? So they make a move to find Rommel. I don't want to keep going with that. Basically, they get Rommel, and his dying words were, "Greed, help me." So the name of the book is "Poaching the Poachers: The Key to Greed." So now it goes into part 4. So when they're back looking at when they got Rommel, in his briefcase, he had this little box, ivory box with a gold key in it, solid gold key. It says "The Key to Greed." And they're like, "Man, what is this key to greed?" So they think back. They said, "You know what? That little guy, maybe that guy, the CFO Heckle, who's the CFO of Make a Mess On, might know." So they go back and they find out that he knows about this greed organization, and they're like, they own everything. They own TV corp, they own broadcasting companies, they own phone companies, they own oil, and so basically the key is you have to have that key to as it's $200 million just to join the group, and that's just for a junior member. The bigger members are like $1 billion, and they got this plan to take over the planet through their Operation Extermination, they call it. So this greed organization, they have their own island out in Fiji archipelago they call it Kingdom Island. And so they're getting ready to have their annual board meeting, and they're going to tell all the details to their membership, about 200 members of the Operation Extermination. They're going to take over the planet. They're going to basically get rid of the rest of the human population through a virus that they created with their in-house virologist. Their in-house virologist, as they call it, Dr. Freak. He's like they like have experimented on one part of the island on humans to perfect their vaccine for the virus. They got subs are going to drop it off on each continent. They also got their demolition squad of provocateurs that are going to be dumping cyanide barrels into water supplies. They got their own AI robot armies in dormant and drone air forces on each continent.
Wow.
So they're going to be able to take out soldiers, and so they're going to have like a gamer patrol, a bunch of geeks who can operate these soldier robots. The robots and soldier AI force are going to be used to clean up the mess once the virus has, killed as many people as it can. And so, but they all got a vaccine, so they're all going to be saved, and they're going to repopulate the earth. They're going to be the new Khans, the new chieftains of the world, And so their leader's name is Big Kahuna. He's the one who put it all together. And so, there's rich people. There's like, a rich African president who, milked his country billions. There's a rich Russian mining magnate. There's rich people from all, rich banker, Rothschild, different people. And there's a lot of like U.S. politicians too. I don't want to get too into it, but so what happens is McClary, he ends up going undercover as Luger Rommel. He goes on a crash diet to lose weight. He perfects his German accent, and Rommel had a scar on his cheek, and so they have a special effects guy put the cheek on and puts the scar on, and he also has a birthmark the size of like a nickel on his hip. They put that on, so they try to, and they also when Rommel died, they took his fingerprints and his iris scan. So they got an iris scan with contacts, and they took his fingerprints so he can pass through any kind of, security or any type of proof that who he is. So anyway, they get he's in the last. Rommel was going to be in the last pledge class for greed. He's one of the last 10 members in the door, and his greed handlers have only met him one time. So they fly to Fiji with Stevens. Mick Stevens, and McClary, and Mick's son, who's the special effects guy, who gets McClary all set to go, looking just like Rommel. And they drop Rommel off where he's supposed to meet at this tiki party for the pledge party. And then the next day, they're going to Kingdom Island. And when they get to Kingdom Island, that's when they have this big board meeting. And then that's where Big Kahuna comes in. He walks in on stage to the sound of Money by Pink Floyd, And so Big Kahuna, he tells the whole story of Operation Extermination. What's going to happen? You guys were the new kings, new chieftains, new Khans of the planet. We're going to spawn the human. We're going to get rid of all the riffraff, and we're going to be the kings of the planet. So basically, what happened is the new president of the United States is friends with Solomon. As when Solomon became president of Jamaica, they became good buddies. And so Solomon tells the president of the United States, because they know there are moles in the FBI, CIA, everywhere, but the new president of the states is sort of a guy, sort of like a Trump guy, who's bucking the system, giving the bird to the swamp, and he's not playing to the game, And so anyway, what they do, they have a task force that leaves in secret to say from Okinawa, from Japan. They got a battleship. They got a little force, they call it task force, of ships, and they got a expeditionary force of Marines, the 31st Expedition Force, and so they go down to on their way down to Fiji, just slowly, and they're waiting. So once McClary's in there, this naval task force is hanging off Fiji. About 250 miles away, just lurking in the waters until McClary gets to the destination Kingdom Island, where they have turned. He took his golf clubs with him, and the Big Bertha golf driver Mick Stevens had turned into a satellite phone, and the dialing pad's in the bottom of the golf head, and the shaft of the club is the antenna, so he can like radio out off the island using a satellite phone. So he radios the task force saying, "Hey, I'm here, locking the coordinates. I'm here at the island. This is where it is. This is where the action is." Then it goes to the meeting, and once he finds out the ominous plans of greed, he gets back on the horn after the meeting and tells them, hey, drop the net on these guys now with,
Wow.
with extreme prejudice, because these motherfuckers are, these guys are going to do some, and he tells them about the virus. And so anyway, what happens is he goes to the swimming pool. The Russian guys are the Russian greed member is like a real lively guy, Bori, and they go to this grotto, big pool to celebrate the new members, that just the pledge guys. And they got they open the menu and they can choose whatever babe they want, and they so what happens is Bori puts Rommel, which is McClary in disguise, disguised as Rommel in a bear hug, throws him in the pool, and then his disguise starts coming off. His scar on his face starts peeling off, and so he goes into this cabana to escape with a girl. She's a clone. Like Greed is cloned females, and they had a clone of Raquel Welch, right? So so McClary takes Rommel. McClary takes Raquel Welch into this little bungalow, and he sees his face is like peeling apart. So, and what happens is the security on the island is picked up on his last satellite phone transmission, so they know that something's going on, and they find out that there's a naval force they see on the radar screen coming in too. So they know something big's going on, because and so they send some boys to the park. They find out that they send the security guys to the pool, and then they find out that the McClary has to go on the run, right? So he's on the run through the jungle, and then so now the naval forces sends a reconnaissance scouting team of F-18s and F-35s in over the island. And then so McClary when he's on the run, he gets back on the Big Bertha satellite phone, and he calls and said, look, these guys are getting ready to they got submarines. They're going to deliver this virus, and the virus is in a lab on the southeast side of the island. You got to blow that lab with missiles, incendiary missiles, and burn that shit up, And so they do that. They blow that thing up, and then from there, basically, McClary's on the run, and but they find out now. Big Cahoon is all pissed. He can't believe his plan is getting all broken up. He can't believe this. And when he finds out that he's like, where's our AI army? Get our AI army out to the beach to take on these Marines that are going to be coming in. And then they find out that all the batteries for the AI robots had a defection. They had shipped them out to North Korea to get the batteries fixed. So they only got 3 working units. They only got 3 working units. So the guy's pissed, right? And so basically the Marines are coming in, and then what happens to McClary is, he's on the run. They're chasing him, and he finds this on the Kingdom Island. They got a Colosseum they built. It's just like ancient Rome. And so they have Greed has like shanghaied people from all over the planet and they brought them, they kidnapped them to be their slaves or be the gladiators in their games, right? So McClary ends up being in the middle of the field in this Coliseum, and the Greed members are up in the audience watching. This is their big entertainment for the day, is to watch this battle of these gladiators, with swords to the death, and so it breaks out where the guys, the gladiators jump over the wall, and they take Greed guys all kidnapped, and I'm not going to tell you yet, but that's pretty much wraps it up, and they end up defunking Greed's play.
So how did you? I mean, this is such an elaborate
Did you
novel.
take all that in?
Yeah, how did you come up with all this? I mean, this is chapters and chapters of story.
Yeah, it's 488 pages in the 6x9 novel. I think the online e-version is about 600 something pages, because it shrinks up a little. But I started off part 1 I wrote first, as a screenplay. That's when I went out to LA years ago with that. 20 something years ago, 25, whatever, back in 2004. And also, I think I had started part 2, when they go after Buckley, a timber tycoon, and it was in screenplay form. So, I just kept chipping at it. I would put it down for a year. I'd work on something else. Then I'd come back. And the last 4 years, I was at it full time, and I was able to get at it full time and bring it to fruition, because it was just such a long going process. And then, I thought of that part four, I just thought about over about 4 or 5 years ago. I thought about that, so that was an add-on. And it just kept hacking out. My English, my writing skills were really horrible when I first started. I got 380 in English on the SATs in high school. I got like 620 in math, but I always loved to read books, and I saw what level I had to be on by reading the great fiction thriller, historical fiction thriller novelists like Ken Follett, Gary Jennings, Wilbur Smith, Robert Linden, all these people, and Mary Stewart. She's great too. She wrote The Crystal Cave. Anyway, I saw what level I had to be on with my writing, and I picked up tips from people. I did have an editor to help me out on part one. I picked up some tips from her, and then I'm an incessant proofreader. I've read the book like 1,000 times, and I'm always improving on something. And I got to where I just tried to be. I'm a perfectionist, and I just kept reading it and rereading it and rereading it. But I knew what level I had to bring it up to, or it wasn't going to be able to be accepted, in the publishing realm, So I did the best I could. And the book just got the 4 out of 5 star review at Online Book Club that has 6 million members. So that was great. They just
it's amazing. How did you come up with all these characters and these plot points? What inspired you? Like, where did you go? Oh, you know what? I'm going to talk about this guy, and this guy comes from this place. How did you come up with that?
Well, that's the one real natural ability I have is like I can come up with plots and plans. I was like always like a captain of my team and stuff because I come up with set a diversion over here when you attack from the other side type of crap. And I was able to I could sort of envision this stuff in my head, and I'm good at coming up with characters and good dry humor and good one-liners, and I just was always able to sort of put these stories together. I started off really writing music. My first song I wrote was Ode to the Vietnam Vet. I just wrote it when I was at work one time, and so I started with music, and then I believe it or not, I started my first writing project was Poaching the Poachers. This, and I like I said, I would put it down and come back to it, but I always sort of had that ability to just to have that imagination and to come up with things, and be able to come up with things. Yeah. And so, I just kept at it. And, like the first editor I had when I first started, there weren't even computers weren't even mainstream. I don't even think there were, like desktop computers. That's how long it took me to write it. And I started writing it by hand with a pencil and paper. And this old editor, he was a writer for the Miami Herald. His name is Herb Siegel. I don't think he's alive anymore. And I answered an ad for an editor in the Miami Herald. Right, I just got out of college, and he said, if you're going to be a writer, you got to keep the fire in your belly, and you got to keep on plugging. You got to keep plugging. You got to keep plugging. And I got that. I've always had that. I've always had where I might not be the person who can get it on the first try, but I keep on plugging, and I can make it happen. I'm sort of so I just and just at the time when I came up with the idea for that story, reggae was real big, and the reggae's always got a good vibe to it, and I was always an environmental, I was always a nature boy sort of, and but like I said, I'm not like a nut job where some of these people are coming out now, like like the global warming stuff, that the Earth's been in natural warming for 300 years now, and it's like it's in constant flux. And I'm not saying, but that I personally, I think they use it a lot for more of a control, than they are for. There's a lot of dark reasons why they're pushing that climate agenda stuff, and a lot of it's actually unraveling. But to err on the cautious side, like hemp's great, and obviously as much natural energy as you can use, it's a great idea. I think.
Do you go ahead?
I was saying with my research, what I did is I found that home units like turbines for the top of your house and solar panels, they run them through an inverter that can be locked into your home energy. And then when you don't have wind, then you can go to gas or go to a fossil fuel. But when you have wind, you can run the batteries, can charge the batteries up with wind or power through an inverter system, smaller units, not these big things that are screwing up the oceans.
Do you have any sketches for this? Do you have any artwork for this?
I got the cover of the book. I do have just two illustrations that are in the book. One's a map of Leopard's territory that shows you the river, the waterfall, where basically his encampment area and the outlying area. And then I've got another map that shows the Buckley estate where they're going to dig the tunnel. It shows you where the shack is, the town. So I didn't get it. I didn't turn it into a graphic novel because it would have cost me a pretty penny to get all that done. That might be something that could be done in the future. But I do write animated books. I got 3 all ages books that are like Disney with an attitude.
So these are your other books.
Well, actually, I ran out of. There's 3 in the series: The Last Leprechaun, A Blarney Tale. Then The Lost Treasure of Captain Smorgan. He was the hardiest pirate in the Caribbean. And then this one's called The Adventures of Black Jack the Cat.
I love it.
Yeah, and it's animated. It's all ages. Like I said, it's like Disney with an attitude.
And you wrote this?
I wrote this when I was in L.A. living on a sailboat, and it's about a cat that grows up in an artist commune at the beach. Then he gets displaced to Palm Springs and has to make his way back to the beach to his loved ones, and he has to go through the desert where he meets him and an indoor cat who's never been outside named Tuna is his sidekick. And so they meet 2 salamanders who ride on horseback, but they got to dodge these coyotes in the desert. And then they hitch a ride back to L.A. Then they got to make their way through the City of Angels, which isn't so angelic. They got to make their way.
Let me see some of the pages inside. Oh, that's great. You drew those?
No, I wish I could. I paid somebody to do them.
That's so cool, man.
This is the novel Poaching the Poachers.
Got it. David, it's pretty impressive that you can come up with this elaborate, almost Indiana Jones kind of a story, no? I mean, is that what your inspiration is?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's. All the books that I read really helped me out. Like Gary Jennings, who wrote Aztec, which was #1 in every country it was printed in back in like '86. It's a great book. And Ken Follett's books and Wilbur Smith's adventure books. I knew that each like chapter, each sequence has to have some kind of action or some little twist that happens. So I sort of wrote this book, Poaching the Poachers, Key to Greed, on that premise. And so I always wanted there to be action. I didn't want the book to start lolling. And
so when you does the book continue? How does I don't want to know the ending, but is there like a cliffhanger, or is it just it's the end of the story?
Oh yeah, it goes right down. There's a chase to the end, and it's really exciting. Plus, I didn't tell you about what happened because the Operation Extermination that it gets put into play. It's like a half-cast version, and a lot of nasty stuff ends up happening because in Greed they have this dirty Russian colonel who has commandeered 6 nuclear suitcase bombs, and they got them on different places. 1 in San Francisco, 2 in Beijing, 2 in Moscow, and 1 somewhere else. I don't know, but I'm not gonna. I want to tell you, but there's the end is very exciting. The whole book. Part 1 is in the review that on the online book club, who's got 6 million members, their in-house reviewer who gave 4 out of 5 stars. He said he couldn't put the book down from when McClary started heading up the river to get the poaching king leopard to when he left on the helicopter. He said he couldn't put the book down. And then I just had another friend of mine who lives in Florida. He's a retired major from the Army. He said he had to stop reading the book because his business, he had to go manage his houses that he had. He said he couldn't stop reading the book. So people were enjoying the read.
Your time in Los Angeles, how did that fuel this book?
Well, I went out there initially in 2001 with this part 1 as a screenplay. It was called The Journey to Leopard's Lair, Approaching the Poachers. And so I had that in hand, and I was pretty much finishing up part 2 the quest for Buckley, the timber tycoon. I hadn't started part 3 when they go after Rommel, or the part 4, the key to greed with the organization. I didn't even have that in my mind at that point. So I drove cross country with those screenplays, and I knew when I got out to L.A. that it was going to be a tough going, because everybody seemed to live behind a real tall hedge or a tall fence, And I said, breaking into the entertainment business or in the writing business is going to be brutal. I knew that as soon as I pulled into town by looking at that. So, and also they did, I remember watching the news, and they did a survey outside of a grocery store that said, I asked everybody who came out of the store, how's your screenplay coming along? And every other person who came out was working on a screenplay. So, it's tough for the people. It's tough for them to get to the good material sometimes, because there's so much, out there. Well, yeah, I've got an all original album of all songs I wrote and recorded with, my band. A lot of different musicians are on the album. There's reggae, rock and roll, funk, good dance songs, dance tracks. There's 14 tracks on the album. It's the all original song soundtrack for the Poaching the Poacher's novel. And so, because in the book, the character's got a band, and I mentioned some of the song titles in the book. So you'll be able to actually listen to the actual songs, and that's going to be up on all the music platforms in about a week, probably. Well, I just go to my stage name for my music is Commander Hemp. So just go to YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, Tidal, Deezer, any of the music platforms, and just put in Commander Hemp, and all my songs should pop up, and you can hear all the songs. I Love Rum, Who Controls the Pot Supply, Call the Wild. They're all there.
That's great. So, listen, Dave, you're a Renaissance man.
I appreciate it, and I'm hoping that I can turn it into. I really want to try to be an advocate for. Hemp, and also the wildlife. Like I just saw recently that in Namibia, Africa, they had to kill like 30 elephants, like 300 zebras, and a bunch of other animals just to feed the human beings meat, because they didn't. Now we give billions of dollars, away for people to fight foreign wars and stuff, and half the money gets, washed in the money laundering machine. Nobody knows where half the damn money goes. But you're telling me we can't go over to like Namibia and help them plant some food, so they don't have to kill all the wildlife. We got to make a better effort to help the animals, and it's really pathetic as far as I'm concerned. I think it's the greatest failure of the human species, being at the top of the food chain, that we can't do better for these animals. It's just horrible, and I really find it quite pathetic, actually. So hopefully I can be a champion for that. I sort of, if I had a little log line to say, I sort of say it's a cross between Clint Eastwood spaghetti western, 007, and Cheech and Chong. There's a lot of good humor in there.
I love it. I think it's great. Good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, you look great, dude. Good to see you.
Thank you. You too, man. Take care of yourself, bro.
Talk to you soon. All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.